Hey legends, welcome back to the Mason Cox Show. Big things happening. We've got a review of last week's big games. Carlton, big W over there at the MCG was a rockin'. Also, we do a preview of this week's games coming up, the best and worst from the weekend. We have a new merch item dropping that is at the very end of this podcast, so you have to listen through this. And also, lastly, I've got to give a shout out. There is a special mom we're going to mention on this podcast, and you know we love mothers here. So make sure you look out for that one. But without further ado, let's get into it. Without further ado, welcome, Braden. Let's get into it.
Oh, Mason, it's finally here. Prelim final week. I don't know. I can't tell if you're nervous or not. I'm trying to gauge a vibe. But I'll leave that for now. Let that settle as we jump straight into our clangers. What do you got?
You know, we love mothers on this podcast. And there was one mother that might have been BOG of the weekend. There was probably BOOG, maybe best off ground. No, she was still BOG. Best off ground mom.
We got there.
We got there in the end. Toby Bedford's mom from GWS. She, let's just say, had a few shampas over the weekend, right? At the game, as you do.
Rude not to.
Yeah, it's rude not to. You're in enemy territory. You're sitting there, big win for the boys. And she decided to, get a mic thrown in her face and make some just really loving comments. And it was absolute TV gold. Oh, I'm going to quote these. Now, I cannot be prouder. I'm just like, Giants, the Green Army is coming.
Yep.
I don't know if anyone updated her. It was the Orange Army is what they call themselves. So she did apologize straight after that.
Oh, this is right.
And I said, what'd I say, Green? Collingwood are quaking because the earth is a-shaking. Now, I'm not sure if that was her visual on the night, is just everything was shaking or what was going on, but very good comments from her. And Hamish, I think she came up when Stephen Caniglio was getting interviewed after the game, and he ushered her off pretty quickly. Let's just say that. It was absolute TV gold.
Oh, I couldn't deal with that one. I don't do well in awkward moments or awkward situations. And that almost just topped me.
And then your mom's sitting there, just the one that's just lighting it up after the game.
I mean, I do the same thing. I was very much doing the exact same thing. But I'm at home on the couch. I'm not on national TV.
Yeah, with a mic in your face. I feel like they almost were like trying to get her on TV because she was absolutely hilarious on the night. What is your clanger for this week?
Well, I went more football orientated, and I just have to say that to me, it was a no-brainer. And it's a real hindsight operator type setup. But the non-selection of Brodie Grundy in the Melbourne team, because it's really hard no matter what way you spin it. To me, it doesn't make sense. If you're talking about going into the game, Max Gawn has some question marks over his fitness, broken toe. We heard it all week. So if you have your ruck who's going into the game with an injury, why wouldn't you pick up the backup all-Australian ruckman that you just have just chilling? All the comments said throughout the year of like, oh, we still really value him and like respect him and he's a Melbourne player until the end of the season and see what happens from there. But for him not to get picked and they roll with Josh Shackey and then to not put Josh Shackey into the game and you lose by less than a goal, what are you doing? It doesn't make any sense. Like, pick Brodie Grundy. He's a good player. There's definitely no chance, no way that it would have been a professionalism thing on Brodie Grundy's point of view. Like, I have zero doubt in my mind, knowing him and spending time with him, that he's a true professional and he'd go out there and give 110%. And 110% of Brodie Grundy is a hell of a lot better than no sub getting into the game and playing any minutes. So it has to be the biggest clanger. It's easy in hindsight because you go like, well, clearly. But I would have said that going into the game.
I kind of found it amazing that they actually made the broken toe of Max Gawn public. I would have just not said anything. No one would have known.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why that was necessary information for them to tell the public.
Very true.
I kind of thought that. I was like, all week I was going like, if I was Max Gawn, I wouldn't want anyone to know. I'd be like, you know what? I'm just going to hide this injury. It's inside a shoe. No one will even see me like walking around with any kind of bandage at all.
Ex-nay on the Roken Bay Ote.
I don't know what that means.
It's Pig Latin, facts. Don't talk about the broken toe.
It's a dying language, mate. It's well and truly dead.
It's Latin.
Yeah, dead. Name anyone that speaks Latin. I don't even think it's a spoken word. All right, we'll get into the games. Melbourne versus Carlton. Massive game. Obviously, Probably everyone knows exactly what happened on this, but we're going to break it down moment by moment. Now, there's a crowd of 96,412 people.
Pretty good.
That is a lot.
Pretty good.
MCC, figure it out. Get the other 4,000 in there.
Yeah, a lot of, obviously, Carlton-heavy game. Crowd was ballistic. A lot of reports going around, all the you could feel the earth shaking and the stadium was quaking, and the Acres goal that sealed it all off. It was pretty nuts.
It was loose. It was. I think the one thing that made me realize how loud it was is, you get the last camera angle of like they go straight to like Cripps the captain or something right as the siren goes, and the cameraman, who I'm assuming was just stagnant, right, and stable, it was shaking all over. The earth was a quaking. It was the same visual that Toby Bedford's mom was getting on the night, and oh man, it sounded like an absolute chaos, which is wild because it was actually a Melbourne home game.
Yeah,
which is even funnier because I was looking at the MCC wing and I was like, yeah, it's all red.
There's been a few conflicts with these home games this final series, but no, it's good to see them. It's good to see Carlton fans up and about. I think how we should do this, we should go through the good, the bad of each team. We'll start with the team that sucked. So we'll jump into Melbourne. Melbourne, 4 consecutive finals losses at the MCG.
Yeah.
Not what you want to hear as a Melbourne fan. And back-to-back straight set losses.
Not ideal.
I think
that was kind of like I guess the story before they even went into this game of like, oh, there's a bit of pressure. They could go back-to-back straight sets. And I just kind of got to the point where I was like, well, I mean, like, you're in finals at that point. It's like every team you're playing is cream of the crop, right? And like there's some teams that are obviously on a roll like Carlton was, and then there's other teams that, you're playing in the top 4, which are the best teams in the comp, right? So it's always tough to win those games, but to go back out in straight sets, it's got to be frustrating. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and it's definitely like we knew Carlton, GWS, even like the other 2, Sydney, and who else went out in the first week?
St Kilda.
St Kilda. Like they were all competitive. The bottom 4 of the top 8 was still really competitive and probably arguably in better form than a couple of the top 4 teams. But it didn't help their goal kicking accuracy in the last, because Melbourne kicked 2-6 in the last to Carlton's 4-2. So you flip that around, and there was some easy shots, some poor discipline. Like I take it back to Pickett's jumper punch on McGovern. That handed away like a free shot at goal. Like there was a lot of incidents like that. Sparrow pulling Walsh into the fence, giving away free kicks. Just like dumb stuff like that gives away field position. You got to reset. You give away a goal. Like you can't do that stuff in finals. Like scores are like hard to come by. So yeah, I don't know.
It's costly mistakes. And you talk about like I think, what was the Melbourne, like 9-17 to Carlton, 11-7 on the day. Like they had plenty of shots at goal. And I think there's like 2 or 3 that hit a post. And then you're sitting there going like one of those converts, then you win the game. So it's this thing of whenever you get a chance in finals, you got to make the most of it whenever it comes in front of goal, especially if you're in a set shot scenario. And there's so many that I feel like were that close to being a goal that could have just kind of kept them in that momentum and be able to get them across the line. But unfortunately, it just didn't fall for them.
Now, there was a few incidents in the game, and we have kind of touched on the Josh Shackey non-sub call. Yeah. Is that something that you're likely to see in a game, that it's like you have a guy in there and you just don't decide to use him? Because they used Hollins and he came on and had an impact, was involved in the last play, which led to the winning goal. So like, especially the contrast of your sub coming on and doing something when the opponent doesn't even use theirs, it's like highlighted to the extreme.
Well, I think like we talked about this before the pod, was he was supposed to go in for Max gone if he needed to come off, and then Tom McDonald would go into the ruck. So the fact that Max was like, no, I'm good to play out the game. And obviously as a captain, you want to see out the rest of the game no matter what your kind of injury is. They kind of put this awkward position of like, do we play him given this scenario isn't playing out as we wanted it to? Knowing that he would have to go to that key forward role, Shackey. So
yeah,
I don't know. Like, I mean, like I think about it whenever we played our last game, Guinea came on in the 4th, like halfway through the 4th. So you got to think like we didn't pull our sub until, the very end of the game. And he was able to make impact in that short amount of time he had out there. But like that game plan they probably had as far as using the sub probably didn't play out as they wanted it to. And then as the game went on, I'd assume Max would have just pulled the card and said like, no, I'm going to play this out because I want to win this game. And it was a close game and everything else too. Yeah. So you like Melbourne goes up early they probably put Shaqy in and like Max comes off and it's like, great, we're going to rest him. He'll try to get better. Like, and everything goes well. But given the fact it was such a tight game, I don't think you really want to pull your captain out in that scenario.
They kind of backed themselves into the corner, rolling the dice on the Shaqy sub because their forwards were actually pretty good. Like you got Fritsch and you got Smith, who was like the most accurate on the day, kicking 3 straight. You got Pickett. It's like, who do you take off? He's not going to inject like any speed into the game. Yeah. We're going to keep Max Gawn out there. We need him.
But if it didn't play out that way, like given the fact that how a lot of people were talking about the forwards of Melbourne whenever they played us and they weren't performing at what a lot of people expected them to, you're probably almost going, okay, like if they have the same kind of game, I guess, that they had the week before, then we might try to change something up and throw him in there and throw him in the mix and see if he can kind of maybe give us a bit of a burst of energy. So I can understand both sides of that, but not using a sub just almost seems like a waste whenever it's an opportunity to, get a bit of fresh legs into the game.
Massively. And we talked about Pickett giving away a free kick on McGovern. He also had an incident similar to his incident earlier in the year where he like jumped off the ground and rocketed into, I think it was Bailey Smith's head, and it could have killed him. But he's jumped off the ground and kind of collected Cripps in the face with his back head almost right in the GPS.
He tried to go for his shoulder and missed him. And then clipped his head,
And Cripps went down, bleeding from the mouth, had to come from the ground.
Yeah.
Pickett got a week, kind of lucky in the end, I reckon.
Oh my gosh. As soon as his feet left the ground, I was like, he's in trouble. He's in strife.
I feel like it's bad that you don't learn from the first time.
Well, that's what I mean. It's because like the AFL would be going, we told you not to do this. Like if you're not learning from your lessons, we will punish you. That's what they did. They gave him a week ban. And I mean, I guess at this time, they're probably not the top thing on your mind after just losing and getting knocked out of the, out of your season. But obviously he won't play the first game of the season next year, but he's a pretty staple in that Melbourne team. So I'm sure he'll come in round 2 and be right in it.
And should we move across to Carlton's game, celebrate a bit of what the Blues have been able to do, because it's their first time they've played in a prelim since the year 2000. How old were you?
I was young. I was young. There's no doubt about that. I don't even
10.
know. I'm trying to do. I was 9.
Yeah.
I was 9 years old. Let's just say I remember Y2K. I remember the internet was going to go down. We're all going to end up losing ourselves, and everything was just going to shit was going to hit the fan. We're all going to die, and
it was great.
None of it happened. We just keep taking it along.
How tall were you when you were 9?
I think it was probably like 6'8", maybe. It was just.
Got it done early.
Oh, that's it. No, it would have been normal height, mate. It would have been normal height.
And we've spoken about Robbie Williams 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, getting a bit of media, old Robbie Williams. Well, loving it.
He is a jinx for Sydney. And then Carlton made the pitch to say, hey, come across and get on the Carlton bandwagon. And he jumped on board and he sung a song post-game after the Blues won about Tom de Koning. What was it?
Please tell the rendition. What is it?
It was, wasn't it like Love is in the Air, but with Tom de Koning?
Probably, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But it just was like, he was like sitting in bed, which I just felt was really awkward to be filming anything in bed. Just kind of not the place.
It's Robbie Williams. He does his best work there.
Do your thing. Do your thing.
But it's been a pretty crazy final series for someone that we can celebrate. Blake Acres, the Sheriff. He's had some kind of final series because the first game, he nailed a couple of touches on the line that saved goals and kicked the sealer, and he's done it again. Kicked the sealer with a cooked shoulder. He's just going out there and doing it all one-armed.
Contested mark at the end of the game. Bit of questions around, wait, hold up. How much space do I have? I'll dribble this one through. And it wasn't like, it was close to the pole, I feel like. The post was there, and I'm sitting there watching it going, whoa, gosh, he's playing on here. Like, oh no, what is he going to do? But can you imagine if he took the mark, came back, and slotted the set shot with the suspense of the crowd and everything else, and essentially at the siren, he's kicking the goal?
I hope everyone was okay out of that situation. You cut to the wide shot and they were going ballistic.
Oh my gosh.
Now, the amount of people that have posted the photos of their like smartwatch going like their heart was beating a million miles an hour. It's like, surely there's some old people in there. So I hope everyone's okay. But yeah, it was, I don't know, it's been pretty special. He's had a great final series.
Oh my gosh,
and speak about a great final. Sam Walsh, 34 touches, 2 goals, 8 tackles.
He's just killing it.
Leave him
You try to
alone.
throw him into the wall, it don't matter. He's still going to get some touches and he's still going to get some goals.
And he has built into it because he was injured earlier in the season and started playing games and was accumulating a lot. And people were questioning the damage that he was doing in games. Well, yeah, he really took it away from him in this one. It was a really impressive performance.
Whenever he came back and started playing, I think that's probably whenever they started turning around their season. So you got to say, like, he's one of those players that maybe is able to kind of break lines and be able to get them to that next step to get to the forward line, because that was their big issue in that first half of the season. So to have someone who kind of connects the back line to the forward line, similar to like Nick Daicos for us, right? Like he'll take people on, hit 45s, like hit people that you probably wouldn't be able to do.
Yeah.
That just allows the ball to get moving forward to be able to get access to the forward line. So I think that's kind of the Walsh effect for Carlton. That's kind of helped them solve some of their issues from the beginning of the season.
Yeah, and it does take the pressure off the others in their midfield. When you got a bloke in there getting 35, he needs a bit of attention. Jacob Wiedering, there was a scary moment for Carlton fans, heart and mouth stuff, where he laid a tackle and copped a shoulder to what the AFL is calling neck and throat area. And he got up very woozy and, unsteady on his feet, you could say. Allegedly.
It's in the goal square. He's giving a little bit of a wobble.
I don't want to say anything that can get the Carlton lawyer onto me. The AFL's ticked it off. He got the all clear. Carlton put him through a quick assessment and went, he's all sweet. So happy days for Wiedering and the Carlton fans, but it would have been a very nervous moment, as was a very nervous moment of Doc actually dislocating his shoulder in the first half. And it kind of looked done for him. And then he came back out and played out the rest of the game.
It was insane. Like I remember seeing that and I was like, oh no, like one of our favorite players is gone. Like he's done. And then next thing you know, he's like, that will strap him up, figure it out, and he's back on. The magic that happens down in those rooms, I'm not sure what they're doing with the Doc and stuff, but you'd think they're doing some kind of like cyber arm thing with
all
him.
Above board, I'm sure.
No, I'm sure there is. And if it isn't, they've got a perfect lawyer to figure it out, Braden. But yeah, no, it was incredible. And for him to come back and play, obviously, like it's a massive deal for him. We talked about like his first final 10 years into his career, like, the first round. So, it's an incredible opportunity for him. And I'm sure he would be that amped up to be a part of it and just wanting to be out there. So I can understand that he came out and he did his job.
I feel like Doc is one of those blokes that you'd have to rip his arm off and he'd probably still be out there running around, just bandaged up. It was when sometimes you see a bloke go down, you're like, oh, his night's done. I wonder when they're going to pull the sub and stuff. And then like a couple minutes later, you see him just like trotting down the wing or something. You're like,
casually, without any issue, no limping, no nothing. You're like,
what has happened?
How is this possible?
It's that magic spray, I tell you.
Oh, it's wild. But we'll move on to the next one. Port Adelaide versus GWS at Adelaide Oval, and the capacity here is 53,583. There were only 45,520. And I say only, but like, let's be realistic. That's still a really good turnout for Port Adelaide. But probably, I was thinking this was going to be a sellout.
Yeah, there was a lot of people, I don't know, questioning it during the week. Port Adelaide fans unsure if they were going to sell it out. I saw people posting like the seating and saying that, it was pretty slow ticket sales. Whereas you look at something like Collingwood GWS, it's gone. That's gone.
Yeah.
You can't get tickets to that game. It was, I don't know if it was a reflection of like the pricing or if it was a reflection of like the belief in where the team sits after a loss going against GWS, the almighty legend
big
killers.
Sound.
And but 45, still a pretty
tsunami.
good, still a pretty good turnout. We don't want to take the piss too much, but yeah, I think the one thing that just immediately jumps off the page, Port kicking 1-9 or having 1-9 score in the last, they could have done some damage.
I mean, GWS had the momentum the whole game. Like, first quarter came out and they were just marking everything. I feel like it was just one of those days where Jesse Hogan was on. He was just being able to clunk everything. He kicked, I think, 4-4 on the day. And there's a certain point there, I feel like GWS, they missed a few set shots essentially right before half, I think it was, and a few like snaps on goal. And that could have just put this game over with before halftime even happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, going into that fourth quarter, I mean, if you look at 1-9 and the difference is, 23 points, you kick a few of those, it's a legitimate game, like between the two of you, even though like you haven't been really ahead by any means the whole game from then forward. So
get your crowd into
the
it.
First three, but yeah, you get the crowd into it, man. Like everyone knows, Port Adelaide's fans are crazy, and they provide a bit of an entertainment aspect to it. There's no doubt about that. And yeah, it's one of those things. Like I said, we said it earlier. Like goal kicking accuracy in finals is so important, and it's a thing that can really determine games.
Yeah, and I think because GWS had that, well, they had the dominance throughout the whole game, but in particular, there was that 10-minute patch, 10-minute patch that ended the game, essentially. It was, I think they kicked 5 goals in 10 minutes or something around that.
Yeah.
And then a whole bunch of points, like you were saying, that, yeah, they could have really
done some damage
in that second quarter. The midfield of Port that everyone's been talking about, Butters, Rosie, Horne-Francis, kept pretty quiet. Butters probably the only one like as a standout. Rosie kept to 17. Horne-Francis normally doesn't get big numbers. He's normally more of a damage guy. Boak tried his heart out, and there's been a bit of talk about Boak, like how he's been treated towards the end of the season and what he does from here on with his career. But yeah, it was a down performance for him, for like this midfield that we all tout as,
elite.
Yeah, I think there was one thing I noticed watching the game was like GWS at any chance and possible moment was just getting the ball forward. And it seemed like all the midfielders of like Port Adelaide were just passing it, and GWS was just off to the races, right? And that just seemed like there's certain times where the ball's going forward and you're going, how is there someone in their forward line? There's no one even on them. Like they're just sitting there open. There's no one even near them. Like there was one point, I think, where there's like 3 people inside 50 and 1 defender. And I'm like, how is this even happening?
Yeah.
So their ability to get it forward, I think, almost like shocked Port Adelaide, and they were just on their back heel the whole time and really tried to wrestle that momentum back and just wasn't able to until probably the fourth quarter when they started getting stuff on the board. But one person that was able to kind of get them or keep them in the game somewhat was Willie Rioli. Like he kicked 3-0 on the game, and he was the only one that even looked remotely close to doing anything for Port Adelaide in that first quarter. And I was thinking, this guy's just hanging on. They're hanging on by a thread, and this man is doing everything he can as possible to be able to try to keep them in the race.
And he's obviously all fellas team of the year.
Hashtag never forget.
Kenny did say post game that he probably had to take more risk with team selection than you'd like to heading into that one, saying that what was it? There was younger players that are still too young to be playing AFL. So as bad as it was, it could have been a hell of a lot worse if they didn't run with the injured players. It's interesting statement, but looking out there on the field, I think Trent McKenzie, probably one of the more obvious ones, hurt his knee last week, had to play on Jesse Hogan, and Jesse Hogan just dominated. Yeah.
I think it's one of those things. I guess you get to the finals, right? Would you play someone who's an injured but experienced player, or would you play someone who's inexperienced in a finals game under the bright lights, and then not as probably is very young in their career? Like it's a question a lot of coaches have to make, but I think a lot of them would probably err on the side of the experience to be able to get them over the line than someone who's a bit younger, maybe in their first or second year, to come in and try to play a finals without much time ever doing that before.
Yeah, and you got to put your trust into those senior players as well to make the call. But yeah, it's an interesting one, and another off season for Port Adelaide. And
I want to go back to this one part of this game, the Butters chair throw.
Oh, it got a lot of attention.
It was wild. It reminded me of a famous college basketball coach who picked up a chair and threw it onto the court. This is a true story. Threw it onto the court in the middle of a game because he was upset with an umpire's call. Probably not to that extent, but it was wild seeing it live, the whole thing play out. Like, I don't know if an umpire can give extra time for furniture moving in the middle of a game or not. Like, the way he went about it was kind of disrespectful, don't get me wrong, but that's, I guess the heat of the moment somewhat. But also, he didn't get extra time, for that scenario of, them being somewhat in the way of, I guess, straight line to the goal. So, I don't know. It's like one of those things I was thinking about earlier. I was like, well, should umpires be able to give 5 or 6 seconds extra for them to be able to, be able to at least organize their shot in the best way possible?
Obviously, it's not a good look from Butters, but
he's moving the chairs out of the way, throwing the chairs, and then he turns around and the umpire's like move it on.
Play on.
It's like, mate, I'm busy like rearranging fucking IKEA down here. Like, we can all do better in this situation. Yeah. Umpire says, hey, let's take a quick pause. Excuse me, can you just move out of the way, please? Because he's trying to take a shot at goal that's really important to him and his team in the finals in the AFL. Big deal. All right, can we just move those chairs? Thanks. Okay, thanks. All right, you ready? All right, time on. Move it on.
Yeah.
It's pretty, like, I think it was just a communication thing on everyone's behalf.
The chair throw didn't look too great from his perspective. Like you said, I think if he had his time again, he'd probably go back and do it differently. But I think there's a better way for the AFL to handle a situation. It's happened before. I remember whenever we played, I think it was Richmond, and Brody Grundy kicked the one right at the siren, and Darcy Moore went back, and someone was in the way too, and he like moved the chair also. And it was one of those things where like you feel like you should get, I don't want to say a ton of extra time, but like 5 or 6 seconds extra, or like him to go, if you can go back, move that, okay, start now, time back on, kind of thing. So I was looking at it thinking there's got to be room for improvement here, but did it, pan out the way it probably should have, and did it look great from a visual perspective? No, but maybe it's a RFI for the AFL.
Yeah. My point about the like social media commentary around it is it's like so hypocritical to be like, oh, you need to show empathy and you need to like be in control of your emotions towards this like water person that's just doing their job, and then just go to town on Zach Butters. Like, I don't get people, but
it's a culture thing. I think is probably the biggest thing. Yeah.
Anyway.
We'll move on to GWS's side of things. Stephen Caniglia, 30 touches, had 22 touches by halftime, and also had 2 goals. Like, he was one of their star players. He is one of the turnaround stories, I feel like, of the last 2 or 3 years. I think we all, heard the stories of him during that Amazon Prime, documentary that he did, and some of the struggles he was going through then. And then for him now to be playing at the level he is and be such an important cog in that machine.
Pun.
There you go. Is it a credit to him? It is a very hard thing to do, and it's a credit to his, his ability to kind of work through those hard times and be able to come out the other side, because it is not easy, but it's great to see him, being able to be positive and making an impact for his club.
You're making it sound like from experience how to, like, turning a form slump around. This is great because I didn't have to bring it up. You were the one that was saying
it. A few times I've gone to the VFL and had a few games and come back.
So you say it is hard. How hard is it? What do you do? How do you get out of a poor form slump, or how do you work your way back into form?
There's multiple things. I think you just get back to the basics. You kind of go back to what you're good at and gain a bit of confidence in that. Obviously, playing at a lower level, you get more opportunities to, play a bit more rock or play a bit more forward or get more aerial contact or aerial contests or whatever it may be. But I think a lot of it, sometimes it's like anything. Like, we're normal human beings. Sometimes we can have a bit of a, our mental health isn't great at the time, whatever it might be, and that might affect our football. And, at that time, you just got to try to find things that, make you happy in life and fill your cup up, as they say. And then that kind of, bleeds into your work life, and then bleeds into your football, hopefully, and can turn things around. But it's not easy. Like, sometimes coaches lose faith in you and they don't want to play you, and then they look to elsewhere. And I mean, whenever I look back to Brody Grundy and Darcy Cameron, there's a point where I got moved out of that ruck position and Darcy Cameron was chosen over me. And that was just part of the process. I think it was maybe Nathan Buckley in the COVID times whenever that happened. And that was one of those things. It was a bit of a shot to your ego and your confidence and everything else, obviously, whenever that happens. But I mean, obviously things panned out differently, and I was fortunate enough to still be in the team. But there's definitely those dark moments you go to, and you got to try to find a way to come out of them. And a lot of times you rely on your friends and family and that close knit kind of group you have. And sometimes they take a lot of negativity from you, but they're the people that are always in your corner no matter what. And that's kind of one of the most important things, I think, whenever that does happen.
Well, it's always good to see it turn around. Stephen Canelio, it was I don't know if you'd describe it as a rough doco, but it's great to see him bounce back. 30 touches, 22 in the first half is insane.
Wow.
2 goals, great goals too. Jesse Hogan, Toby Green, it's going to be hard to shut down these guys. 4 goals 4, 3 goals 2 between them. So combined for 7-6. So at least there's a bit of inaccuracy there. This one's the most important selection for GWS. They got Kieran Briggs, who hurt his shoulder in the game on the weekend.
Did come back in and play. Finished off the game.
Yeah. You probably know better than me. Do these shoulder things, they get worse over time?
Like we talked about Doc earlier in the podcast.
Yeah.
Dislocate a shoulder and pops back in and can go back out there. Is that going to be painful?
Fucking hurts. No, there's no doubt about that. There's probably a few needles involved and a few kind of numbing agents and stuff like that. But you look at Doc will probably play this week again after dislocating his shoulder, and he'll just have it heavily strapped. So I think there's definitely. I mean, I'll plan to say that Briggs will play on the weekend. That's the way we'll plan it. But obviously everyone's pretty, I guess, switched on as far as injuries and stuff like that. But I think whenever you get to this time of year, adrenaline kind of kicks in. Injuries don't matter as much. So, obviously he had a little bit of a shoulder thing over the weekend, but the fact that he came back on and played shows that he's still able to. So I think he'll should be able to get up for the weekend.
Oh, it's just another little thing that adds to the story. It's pretty hard to tap when you got no shoulders. But
got another arm.
We'll see how it all plays out. Yeah, he was still winning ruck taps with his one arm. I was like, bro. He's had a big final series now. Something that people are kind of sooking about. I'll describe it as sooking. Is GWS's 6-day break coming off this win. Now, argument would be that it's meant to be the advantage goes to the team that finishes on top, and it's meant to be harder for the teams that finish below them. Yep. And that's how it works. Next, this prelim, whoever wins these prelims will get an extra day's break going into the grand final. That's how it works because that's the advantage you get finishing up the ladder, Mace.
Yeah.
So, saying that, you've had a lot of time. You've had a lot of breaks, a lot of time to recovery. Yep. What's the way up between the old classic, you haven't played a lot of footy in a 3-week span of time compared to like these guys have been 4 games in a row this will be on the road and coming off a 6-day break.
Yeah, I think the 6-day break was interesting. Like I found it amazing that the schedule wasn't sorted beforehand. Like we found out essentially Sunday or Saturday night, I guess, after the game that we were locked in for Friday. Like it was still a question mark. We weren't able to actually give our schedule out until the weekend because you would think that these things were planned, back in like March. Like it's pretty wild to think that like we're figuring out what day we're going to play the week of. But I understand there is venues and everything else that comes with it. That probably is a bit of, having to reserve things and whatnot. But yeah, the 6-day break thing, like the question mark I think was around, I guess, the competitive nature of it, or whether or not it's fair. Like you said, whenever you finish first, there is benefits you get to finishing first, whether it be a double chance or this. And that's just kind of the scenario because AFL is not going to play 2 games on a Saturday.
Yeah,
they're going to play 2 primetime games. So one of the teams is going to get screwed. And that's just the fact of the matter. If we were playing in non-primetime games and we wanted to, play it all at once, all on a Saturday, I'm sure we probably would. But there's too much money in the game to not be playing a Friday night game and a Saturday night game. And that's just kind of part and parcel with the AFL.
Makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. You can't you're going to tell me they're going to play an afternoon game at 12 o'clock on a Saturday? Like, no damn chance. They're going to play two night games, which, let's be honest, this is a grand final. Maybe you should probably fall in line with that. But we continue to talk about that, and they'll continue to be a talking point. And, there's money to be made by it being in prime time. Therefore, it will forever be in prime time. Unfortunately, for one of the teams, that just means they're going to have a shorter break.
One main reason why you wouldn't play it in the middle of the day, as we move into other news, is because there might be snakes on the field, Mace.
There's a snake in my boots.
Killer snakes. Finally, you got something to send back to the family and friends in America going, geez, we got another snake out here on the field.
I thought this, whenever I read the headline, I was like, this thing must be a 2-3 meter long snake. This would be massive. They would have been seeing this from ages away. See the video. It's like literally 20 centimeters. This thing is nothing. It was so small. It was deadly. I must say that. So it is important to get the snake off the field. But my picture of it was very different from what was the actual image of it and whenever it came to the game. But they did have to delay the AFLW game between Richmond and GWS out at Blacktown because there was a deadly snake on the field.
See,
and that is the most Australian shit you will hear this week.
See, it's not about the size; it's about how deadly it is.
Can I just give a shout out to Gandalf that picked it up? I don't know if you've seen the photo, but that guy, beard of a goddess.
He looked like a snake handler.
Yeah, he was like literally who I would picture if I was like, I need to ring up old Jake the snake handler.
If he was walked through the gate, you're like, the snake handler's here.
Yeah.
Over here.
Yeah,
Snake.
just right here.
I wouldn't say that you're right all the time.
No,
I would probably say that you're wrong most of the time.
most of the time, yes.
But
I would
you
agree.
are correct about the Gold Coast Suns because
My
they're
boys! We back, baby!
Gold Coast Suns have made the grand final. You just picked,
Just like I planned, Braden. I knew it from the start. Been on this bandwagon for a long time.
you just picked the wrong league.
Yep.
So the VFL,
We never got into the details.
Gold Coast have made the grand final of the VFL, which is big for them. That's massive. It shows that, there's some talent coming through. Mabior Chol took a hanger.
Hanger of hangers. Oh my gosh. It was elite.
So you're backing them into it and get the dub in the grand
Of course.
final?
I have no idea who they're playing, but they're going to get the dub. They're going to murder them. Chol's just going to get, he's going to go to the moon, as we would say. Big love for Chol too. Absolute legend. But yeah, no, it's great to see him in the grand final. It shows that they've got a few guys coming through in the younger leagues that are, helping them be successful. And I think, like I said, next year, finals.
And while we're
And not just in the VFL, Braden. Let me just I'll
that's
clear
what we
that
need
bit
to
up.
clarify.
Yeah.
Not the AFLW, or maybe they can get that what's the medal when all your teams are good at the same time? We talked about it last
Oh
week,
my
but
gosh, they get like $1 million or something like that. I'm not really too sure.
that'll be good when you're pocketing $1 million this year.
I won't see a dime of it.
And Harry Sheasel won the best and
Shees.
fairest for North.
Yes.
Pretty good effort.
It's pretty good. First year. Not bad. Second year. Sorry. Second year. Second year. Winning a BNF. I'm not sure if he gets a big bonus or not. But let's just say maybe him and his family and his mom are going to Bali again. Who knows?
Yeah, that's it. Potato head. Get
Tabs
a big
on him.
booking.
Tabs on him. But no, credit to Harry. An incredible accomplishment. And he's going to be an absolute gun for that team for a long time. So it's a little shout out to Harry for winning the BNF over there. It's quite something you should be extremely proud of.
That's enough. Flapping the gums about other crap that happened outside of finals.
Yeah.
Let's jump in to this week's preliminary finals. Brisbane versus Carlton at the Gabba.
At the Fortress.
Last time these two teams met was at Marvel Stadium. Not as much a fortress. Brisbane still won, 26 points. And Charlie and Zach Bailey, 4 goals each. Harry and Charlie, 1 goal each. That's not as many goals. So that's probably why they lost. Carlton banged up going into this one. They got Doc's shoulder, obviously. Cripps still going with that rib injury. And
that thing is like, that's almost like, whenever they had the jousting back in medieval times. It was like
they
that
wrapped
big.
the couch around him.
It is wild.
And he copped that, the hit to the mush that saw him go off for a little bit. But
Bleeding from every orifice in his post-game interview. It was wild.
That's not good. And then obviously Akers' shoulder, but he'll just keep plugging away. But they have got some players to come back in, which makes things a little spicy because they got Harry Mackay to come back in, Jack Martin, both available. Harry was out with concussion. Jack Martin was out with being stupid. Big punch to the face. So he's back in. I don't know who comes out. So there's got to be some unlucky players coming out of this one. You never want to get dropped for a final, let alone a prelim, let alone a grand final. So it's going to be very interesting coming into this one. We got some key matchups. Who do you see there, mate?
I've got the two Charlies going at it. Big fan of the old motorbike Charlie. And obviously you've got the other Charlie at the other end.
King
and it's
Charles.
going to be, King Charles. Yep. And then we've got, what's Charlie Cameron's Shark Dick dude? No, that's Jay.
He's Country Road.
He's Country Road, yes. And who knows, maybe they'll be able to finish a whole song this time before he kicks another goal. Not too sure.
6 goals back to back to back.
Oh my gosh. Between them two, though, I'm expecting, let's go 8 goals between the two of them. I'll expect 8 goals. Yeah. And it's going to be, I'll go Charlie Cameron kicks more. Yeah. I think he's primed for a big
there.
matchup.
He's just always big at the Gabba.
Loves the prime time at the Gabba. Big fan of him, but I think those two are going to be awesome to watch. Obviously, 2 gun forwards of the league who've been killing it all year.
What do you make of Charlie Curno's final series today? He's kicked 2 goals in 2 games. Not really setting the world alight. First game, he had a lot of touches. Set up some things. Second game, not as much. Pretty quiet.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I don't feel like Carlton's kicking massive scores in general. Maybe they've chosen a bit more of a defensive style with their finals campaign. I'm not too sure, but I think he's primed. Everyone knows he can kick an absolute bag on a big stage. So he's primed at some point, I feel like, to be able to have that massive game and kick a few goals.
Yeah.
And I think this is the one he's going to have to for them to get over the line.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like a lot of Carlton's mid-tier has been stepping up in finals. But can't wait to see Big King Charles get up there.
What are you looking at? What matchup are you looking at?
Yeah,
juicy.
I look back to see last time, and it was Dunks playing on Paddy Cripps.
Yeah.
And Dunks probably had his best game for Brisbane. Up until that point, at least, definitely. 33 disposals, 14 of those contested, 13 tackles, 6 clearances. And Cripps only had the 17 touches.
13 tackles.
That's a lot of tackles.
That's a lot of tackles. That's my season, probably, of tackles in one game.
It's pretty good. And touches.
Pretty wild, and touches. Dunks.
It was a pretty good game. So, it's always interesting to see if teams go back to the well and then to see if the other team has an answer for it.
Yeah.
Do they just roll back and do the same thing? Because clearly it worked. And do they help Cripps out more? It'll be interesting to see. But yeah, that's mine. I'm keen to see how your boy Harris Andrews does down there. I like watching the defense come finals. Like we all like big goal kickers.
Get away with a bit more of the defensive finals.
Yeah, and there's been some great
Stephen
defensive
May,
setups.
A little shout out to him over the weekend.
Yeah.
He dominated.
Teams now all seem to have a really key back.
Yeah.
Like you got May, Lever, you had Alia, you got Darcy Moore, you got Harris Andrews. Like they all got these absolute jets. And it's fun to just see them go head to head with a big key forward.
Oh yeah.
I kind of missed out on that from Melbourne because Melbourne don't have any forwards, but
ruthless.
I digress.
Max Gawn went up there and played a little bit, did
and he did well. So maybe if there was something where they could have got a ruck in and then Max played forward, but I don't really know how they could have done that.
Calm down. We'll move on to the next game.
What's that one?
It's the Collingwood versus GWS game, prelim at the MCG. I don't know what you're predicting as far as an audience there, Braden, but I would have to say it's got to be over 95% Collingwood.
It is almost a replica of that. Well, one, you've already versed them in a prelim, but I feel like it's going to be that vibe of that Richmond GWS one where it's just massive numbers one-sided. And we'll see if they can pump up the volume greater than Carlton fans could. I will say going into this game that I've been told already, external to this room, that I need to park my alliance to the GWS Giants.
Wow.
Because
no, I didn't say this. I want to preface this.
So I've had a good ride on GWS all year.
Yeah.
But I can't take them over Collingwood. So I'm saying this is where the Giants run.
So you tell me if they win over the weekend, you're not going to come in here and I told you the big sound for the rest of the town.
I'm coming in fully decked out in merch, but it's just for this game.
For sale.
I'm parking it here and I'll say this is where my alliance to GWS is halted.
Wow. All year. It comes down to the clutch moments, Brad. I must say this for everyone listening, though. I did not have any influence in this decision.
And it's painful because I was on them early, so you better win. But let's jump into the talking points because last time you versed these guys, 65-point winners, probably the last little part and maybe even the catalyst for them just turning things around. 65-point win, round 9 at the G. And people might remember this game for the game that Mason Cox tore apart with your 19 touches, 2 goals.
19. Wait, hold on. Let's check that. That is better than – no, Dunks has still got another 15.
Damn it. But it was pretty good. And you played against Matt Flynn in the ruck.
Yeah.
Who is interesting because he's around and Briggs injured. Whether they make a change there. It was pretty even in the ruck. But you did play well across the ground. What do you remember from that game? And do you take much from it? Or does it feel like it's a lifetime ago for both teams?
It feels like a lifetime ago. I think Matt Flynn had the most clearances out of their team. So I don't think I had that as great of a game as you're really making it out to be. But yeah, we'll end up seeing what the ruck battle is going to be like. But I think this game at the MCG, although the score was heavy one side, I feel like it was a pretty close game as far as everything. Whenever you look at the stats, I think you wrote down on here like the Collingwood's tackles were 63-29. That was the big kind of thing that stuck out. But and the kicking efficiency inside 50 was 62% to 47%. So other than those stats, it was pretty even keel.
Yeah.
But obviously you look at, I guess, our ability to finish in front of goals, the efficiency we're going in, and everything else was the reason we're able to get up by that many points. So it's going to be an interesting game. I'm really excited for it. Like obviously GWS on a bit of a roll at the moment. And you talked about them, and the last time we played them was a catalyst for them to be able to go on a bit of a roll. And then I think back to Port Adelaide round 2, after we smashed them at the MCG, they went on like a 12-game straight winning spree. So they seem to have like, all of a sudden got a bit of a fire lit up under their ass and had a really good time after we played them. But it's going to be a big game. Like you said, a massive crowd. I'm excited. It is exciting times. And geez, it's going to be a roar at the MCG. I feel like we've never heard before.
Jeez. And so the stats last time, it was like disposals were the same, like clearances were the same, like inside 50s were the same. So it must have come down to like your looks and the names that I read out here. You can't let these guys get this much of the ball. Nick Daicos, 41 touches. Tom Mitchell, 36. Jordan De Goey, 31 to goal. They're pretty damaging players. So it would have been some pretty good service, I imagine. Jesse Hogan did well up the other end, kicking 3, and it's been one hell of a year for Jesse Hogan.
He is killing it. Like, credit to him. Like, I feel like there was that time where he's at Fremantle and there's the questions around his career and everything else. And now at the GWS Giants, he has reinvented himself. He is dominating out there and he's kicking like at least 3 goals a game. So his ability to move around, I was watching him on the weekend, his ability to get behind his defender, move around and keep them guessing is just like second to none. And he can take a big clunk too. So he's definitely got the attributes to be an important key player in their team over the weekend.
And who's the matchup on him?
Who's the matchup on him? Would probably be Darcy Moore, I would assume. He's a pretty decent defender himself, which would be a great little matchup.
Great matchup to watch for. I will say that my favorite matchup is and always will be Toby Green versus Braden Maynard.
Oh, yes.
I want it to go forever.
How long do you think it's going to take for them to get in a scuffle? 10, 15 seconds into the game?
I feel like there's that like respect between them.
There is. That's the funny thing. But like in between the sirens, they're like, nah, I don't give a shit who you are.
Yeah, it's always so good. And Braden, he's held himself pretty well over the years. So always be good. Obviously, coming off a pretty stressful period of time for Braden Maynard. So it'd be good to see how he bounces back. And Toby Green hasn't been suspended or even looked at this final series. So he's a changed man as the captain of the All-Australian squad.
The AFL has just, reinvented him.
So there's been a couple of injuries and a couple of returns.
Yep.
Nick Daicos.
Yeah, it's good to have the best player in the league back. That's nice. That's a tick.
So we've been seeing him. He's got the tick of approval for Collingwood. He's back. Saw him at training doing little stoppage drills and stuff. Or he's building. Is there no nerves about bringing him back just off your run into a prelim?
Yep.
Good luck.
Yeah. I mean, I still got him for the Brownlow, so I can't imagine you'd be like, oh, Brownlow medalist. You have to ease into this one.
What if you start him as the sub and then just don't bring him on?
I couldn't imagine that. That'd be wild. Wouldn't that be silly?
And then is it just a matter of Taylor Adams, unfortunately, and he's been through this similar in the past, hamstring injury, strain at training this week?
Pretty minimal, I feel like, from what I've been told.
Yeah.
So there's still capability of him playing if we go over the weekend to be able to have play in the granny. But it happened in training, and it was one of those moments where you can see someone's face and you see them kind of hobble in. And I remember seeing it, and I was just like, "You got to be kidding me!"
Yeah,
like this guy's been integral part to our team for a long time, obviously in the leadership position, but also just around the ground. And you feel for that, like it's never a position anyone wants to be in. And someone who was part of that 2018, where we were that close to winning the whole thing, and be a part of a campaign now. And have to sit out a big game like this is definitely going to tear him apart inside, I'm sure, for a bit. But I know he's a guy that loves to do the best to be able to get back in. I've noticed over the last little chunk that he's doing every single thing he can to be able to try to put himself in best stance. So he might be a possibility. So it's a credit to him. He's going to do everything in his power. I think he's been in the hyperbaric chamber about 10 times the last 4 days. So he's obviously you would be gutted, as you can imagine, but prayers up to him.
Prayers up. He's had a really good season.
He has, yeah.
What's changed about his role? Because he's moved into a new role.
He played midfield and then he got moved into the forward line. So he's kind of playing a bit of that small forward now, brings that pressure. And his ability, I guess, to have a leadership role in that forward line has been massive. So he's playing a bit of a different role, but with so many midfielders coming in, you have to be able to kind of move people around in different places to give people rest and get people inside the coalface. So he's been one of those that's had to change a bit of what he does on the football field, but he's it's a credit to him. He's been integral all year, and fortunately we won't have him over the weekend.
They got like Cornelio, Whitfield, Tom Green, which allows Toby Green to play up forward with Jesse Hogan, who's killing it. Down back, they got Sam Taylor, they got Harry Himmelberg. Like, they're all pretty talented footballers. And looking back now, it's probably surprising that it was picked to have like this drop off.
Yeah.
Like, where do you start and where do you look at when it comes up against GWS? Well, like, what's their dangers?
Yeah, I think they play really well together. Right, like they connect really well. Their ability to give them best service inside forward 50 was a massive thing over the weekend. I felt like it was very noticeable. But they're just a team that has those key pillars and those key positions that you need as far as leadership, as far as making plays and things like that. That's really put them in good stead throughout the finals campaign, throughout the year. To be honest, like they have been a team because they're in Sydney, maybe because they're not the bigger team in Sydney and stuff like that. They've flown under the radar a bit, and I think teams maybe throughout the year have, I guess, looked past them somewhat, and they've made people pay every single game, and they're on a bit of a roll at the moment. So, they'll look to continue that momentum, I'm sure, over the weekend, and their ability to get the ball forward has been incredible. And like I said, some of their key players are really, stacking up whenever it comes to these finals campaigns and making a statement. So it's a credit to them what they've been doing so far.
Cornelio, Josh Kelly.
Yeah.
Good team.
Good team.
Best GWS player that's going to be out there?
What do you got for me?
Will Hoskin-Elliott.
The Hosk. We love the Hosk.
What's your week look like now? What have you been doing over the bye period? What's this, 2 weeks kind of looked like? And how do you ramp up going into the game?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of an interesting one to play 2 games in a month. It's a weird feeling. Like, we've never gone this way through finals. We've always had to go the hard way. So I've never actually experienced to have a week off during finals, and watching the games over the weekend, it was this weird feeling of like, we should be playing kind of thing, like we should be playing tomorrow. So that was a bit odd, but we got the week, a few days off, and then we essentially just get into the normal routine now. So same thing that we're doing all year as far as going into games and as far as reviews and previews and everything else. It's a normal week. So nothing really changes too much from our perspective. We just continue kind of doing what we've been doing all year with, obviously scouting another team and try to put our things that we think will go well against them into training and then go from there. So not much changes, to be honest. Like, there's a bit of hype, obviously, with the prelim and a bit of chaos around the noise and stuff like that. But I think inside the 4 walls, it's pretty much the same week, just that we've had all single year or every week all year. So it's pretty cruisy. It's kind of a weird feeling to, I don't know, everyone expects like something nuts to happen or something unique or different. And it's like, same old, same old.
So you don't feel, it's not like feeling any different. You're not nervous. You're not anxious.
The schedule's the same and everything else. Like, I mean, like, I remember in 2018, you played the grand final, and like whoever makes it there, it's like a very different schedule in the week. But like a prelim you don't have all that extra stuff that comes with it. So it's very much just another game, like in that sense. So, it's going to be an exciting weekend. It's going to be an incredible crowd, hopefully, and hopefully we can get the win.
Being on like a massive stage like that in front of a massive crowd, people always say it's like the biggest crowd you get.
Yeah,
because you don't have the corporates and
all
of that.
Most passionate crowd you would get.
Does your brain let you absorb what's happening?
Not really. Whenever the siren goes, it becomes process. Like, I think obviously in big moments where someone lays a tackle or something, you hear the crowd and like you hear that kind of stuff. But I feel like because you're so like, I guess, in the moment of the zone and trying to get people organized and trying to be part of the cog in the machine kind of thing, that that's not consciously happening in your head. You're too busy focusing on the things that are happening in front of you. So obviously you feel the crowd at times, and you notice it if you win. You'll definitely get to sit back, and after the siren goes, you're sitting there looking around like, this is incredible. Like at the Melbourne game, as soon as that siren went, it was like this sigh of relief. And you're looking around, the chaos and the people in the stands going nuts. You're like, holy shit, this is wild.
Did they just see all of that?
I was like, oh, you've been watching this whole time? Oh my gosh. No, it's incredible to have an amazing Magpie Army there, and for them to enjoy it with us and help us through these times. We talk about a 19th man on the ground, and that's what it feels like. And it's an incredible to be part of a club that brings that kind of passionate supporters with it. But as far as crowds, as long as you get 96,413, which is one more than the Carlton game, I'm happy.
Come on.
I'm happy. So it'll be a big game. Go out and, if you've got the MCC passes or whatever it is, make sure they're filled. And just let's fill up the MCG. I'm excited. It's going to be a good time.
And lastly, before we wrap things up, you got the fam coming over. Filthy Phil's going to be tearing it up.
Filthy Phil, have a look out for him. He'll probably be on the banner before the game. He tends to get with the cheer squad with my mother and hold up the banner. They just love the footy.
Nice.
They'll get in on Wednesday. One of my brothers is already here, and then the other brother comes in on Friday. So the whole fam will be here over the weekend, which will be exciting. Last year, they weren't too happy with my performance because I played a half of game. And then we lost. So then they stuck around for the grand final and was like, I came here to watch you play 45 minutes of game time. And I was like, yep. Sorry, bro. So hopefully I can have a better experience this time around, but it is great to have the family. I'm sure there'll be a bit of media with them. They tend to find a mic somewhere.
And lastly, we will say a quick prayers up to Ron Barassi and Kevin Cowboy Neal.
Yeah.
Unfortunately passed throughout the week. So prayers up to those two.
Yeah, icons of the AFL, devoted their life to the AFL, and a chunk of a huge chunk of their life and time on this earth to the successes they've had. So a credit to them, what they've been able to accomplish, and thoughts and prayers go out to their family and friends.
It's a week away before we're sitting here and seeing what's happening after the big prelim. It's weird. God, it's getting exciting. And if you haven't already, jump on, subscribe. I reckon we're that close to knocking up another milestone on our YouTube. So if you're on Spotify, if you're a podcast listener, jump over. Follow us on the YouTube.
Actually, just for the numbers, just listen to both.
Just listen to everything.
I will say one last thing before we get out of here, because I mentioned it at the top. There is a stubby holder, or what I call a koozie.
Koozie.
The carltondraft.com.au. It's in the link for the bio and everything else. So get your merch there. And it is a new addition to the Mason Cox Show merch, which we're excited about.
How was the person holding the jumper up in the background of the Fox Footy coverage?
I don't know who that guy was, but hey, shout out to you, man.
So good.
Man.
I get so many photos from my mates that go to the footy that are taking photos of people lining up to get beers and stuff wearing our jumper. It's good.
Oh, how good.
So many OG crowds.
We love the love. We love the love, and it is very much felt in this podcast. So thank you so much, everyone. Hopefully it is an incredible weekend. Hopefully you enjoy it. It's going to be a massive game. I just want to say a massive, massive thank you for being part of the community and listening in.
No more big sound.
Meow.